Everyone, Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation, and the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, and of course, this wonderful community, my MAAP community, who all have made plans for their pets, navigated the journey their pets are going to take if something happens to them. I want to have a big shout out to Beth Miller, who had me on Wagtown today to talk about the MAAP plan, and I'm hoping that some of you who listen to this recording will learn something new today about how to make a plan for your pet. So I'm going to check in with my regulars, who I'm so glad are here. Susan, who has a Catan named Maggie, who's a little bit naughty, pretty much naughty. And now we just were chatting before I went live. She's a little chubby naughty. So we are going to address that a little bit here as well, because what we do here is we're a community that helps each other find a way to take good care of our pets. Hi, Melissa. How are you? I'm going to check in with Sally. Sally, how are you and the girls?
The girls are great. They had baths today. It was a tad on the cool side. It's fall in New England. And both of them jumped up and gave me a zillion hugs when it was over. And I was using the comb, which neither dog loves. But when I used it on one, the other one was on top of me because it's like, no, don't pay attention.
I might not want to be combed, but you're not going to comb her.
Yeah, exactly. So life is great here on the East Coast. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's great here too. Melissa, welcome again. How are you?
Hi. It's been a bit. I'm doing really great. Since the last time we spoke, I have moved on. I'm no longer working with the judge. I just started with the firm, and they were going to let me grow my own business however I want. So I'm looping back in.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing family law, but I said, how about animals and dispute resolution with animals and all that? And they were like, yep. So I'm looping back in with that. And I have to say, did you go to Willamette?
No, my brother.
Oh my gosh. Okay. My daughter is looking at colleges, and that's one of the colleges that's very, very high on her list. So when I saw it, I was like, oh,
hey, 6 degrees of separation.
The greenest campus in America.
She loves that. And she's thinking about studying environmental science and sustainability. And she plays women's lacrosse, and they have a team, and there's all kinds of great things about it. So it's in the top 2.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, that's fabulous. Well, you'll have to see if Sally can connect you with her brother so that your daughter can talk to an alum who will probably say, yes, go. So, Melissa, remind us about your dogs.
Okay, so I have an English Springer Spaniel who is 6, and I have a pug. Well, my younger daughter, not the older daughter, the younger daughter has the pug. His name is Macaroon, and he is 4. Sorry. I literally walked in the door from work 30 seconds ago. He's 4.
Well, we're so glad you joined us today, because we're going to talk about so much of the interesting things that have come up. Labor Day weekend, we had in the Irish setter world, we had the loss of someone who was very near and dear to us. And she had 7 dogs, and no will, no plan, no nothing, and 7 dogs.
No.
And so the Irish setter world, of course, rose to the occasion, came, got the dogs from the brother who knew nothing about what to do. And of course, the thing that's really interesting about that is that the brother is a little scared. So all these wonderful people come to help with the dogs, but is this what Jan would have wanted? And that's why making a MAAP plan helps the people in your life know what you want. And you have to write it down. Today, while I was on Wagtown with Beth Miller, she brought up an interesting point. She goes, well, I don't know if my neighbors want their telephone number on my back door. And I said, well, this is a new and interesting thing that I'm going to bring to the group, because you know what? People probably don't want their telephone number on the back door, but they'd really be okay with their telephone number being on the fridge, or their telephone number being somewhere. So what you need to do, and Susan just did it because I've been haranguing her for months now, is to put a note somewhere where EMT or police or whatever, fire, are going to come into your house in case of emergency. My pet directors are here, because I always think if you can put the telephone numbers there, they don't have to look for them. Much easier. However, if you are considerate of your neighbors and maybe they don't want their number out there, make sure it's somewhere where the police can easily find it, because otherwise, I think Melissa, that animal care and control will take your dogs if they're home alone. If you live home alone and you get ill, your pets are going to go to animal care and control, and they're going to call you to see exactly what you want to do with your pets, and they have a 5 or 7 day hold. If you don't answer your phone because you're in the hospital, because you're sick, or maybe you didn't bring it with you or whatever, then those dogs, maybe you're on vacation and the dogs got out and got picked up by animal care and control, and they're calling you, but you're on vacation or whatever. You left it with the dog sitter. They will then hold the dogs for the mandatory time, which is usually somewhere between 5 and 7 days. And then they're going to give it to a shelter or a rescue. And if your dog is adopted out of a shelter or a rescue, you will never see it again. Now, let me say that one more time slowly. If your dog is adopted out of a shelter or a rescue, you will never see it again. And I say this with complete authority because some of the smartest attorneys that I know are writing those contracts from the ABA Bar Association Animal Law Committee, because we have taken it upon ourselves to help rescues write their contracts so that when they place a dog, that dog stays placed, that nobody can come and take that dog away from them, because that would thwart people wanting to adopt a dog from a rescue, right? You're not going to adopt a dog from a shelter or a rescue if the previous owner shows up 2 years later and can take the dog back. So it really is important for you to put that information somewhere where you can have police or fire or EMT call the people who are going to take your dog so they never go to animal care and control. Second piece is maybe they can't get those people. Like, they call all 3 numbers because you have to have 3 numbers. I'm a big 3 person. If you get 4, I'm even happier. If they can't get any of those people and they take the dogs off the premises, make sure that the 3 or 4 people who are to be called have a letter that says, Sally can pick up Athena and Roxy. I know you took them out of Deborah's house, but she has permission. And if she doesn't show up, then Connie's going to show up and have a letter, or Melissa's going to show up. They have to have some directive signed by the owner of the dog to allow animal care and control to let the dog out to that person. So it's not only that you need to have your neighbors know that the dogs are supposed to stay put if something happens to you, and they know who to call. It's also that you have to give those people power to get your dogs out of animal care and control. If by virtue of, Murphy's Law, no one is available to pick up their phone when you need them to, and the dogs get taken, you can go and get them for your neighbor. I know during COVID, we talked about this a great deal. So before I run my mouth a little bit more, I'm going to check in with Connie. How are the Wheatons? I hear that the National is at Morrison, Essex this year.
No, the National, Morrison, Essex, of course, is, once every 5 years, but the National is always at Montgomery County, which is the following Sunday. Morrison, Essex, of course, is a week from today.
Yes, I know. I'll be there.
Well, I will unfortunately miss you because we'll be in the air that day, arriving at about 5:30 in Philly. But at any rate, I'm so sorry to miss you.
You'll be there on Thursday.
I'll be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then our board meeting is Monday.
Well, I don't know that I'll be able to, but I will try. Shoot me your cell phone information.
I sure will.
Because I will still be at the Home Suites, which is the judges, not that I'm judging at Morrison, Essex, although I did judge sweepstakes at the first revival of Morrison, Essex, a claim to fame.
Oh, yay.
I have the Tiffany Bowl to verify that I was there.
How neat.
Of course, it's in storage with the rest of my entire life.
Of course.
But I digress. So I will be there, and I hope I can come over early in the morning and catch up and meet my dear friend Connie in person. And I will be, I guess, seeing some of the Wheaton Terriers there before you get there, because I'll be there on Wednesday.
Absolutely fabulous. Well, we have for our specialty, which is on Sunday, at Montgomery County, and all our shows Thursday through Sunday are at Macungie Memorial Park. We're usually at Montgomery County Community College, but because of COVID, they said,
Yeah.
So, at any case, we're trying Makungi for the first time.
Oh, Casey.
No, this is mommy. This is
Oh.
mommy Patsy, giving Casey all kinds of what for.
Well, as one should, as one should.
Yes, as the maternal adult supervision. But at any rate, so we will have 108 Wheatons on Sundays. So yeah, that's a huge entry. I mean, that's like normal times. So
I know, like the old days. So Connie, I want to introduce you to Melissa. She's been here before. She has a Springer Spaniel who's 6, and then her daughter has a pug whose name I forget, but I thought it was so cute, who's 3. You're muted, so I missed that.
Sorry, his name is Macaroon.
Macaroon.
How cute.
Isn't that a great name for a pug?
We call him Mac. We call him Mac.
Of course.
Macaroon. Yeah.
Of
So,
course.
well, I called my Irish setter who was Macaroon. So there you go. So
There you go.
it was the other way. So Melissa is an attorney. She was working for a judge, and then she and I somehow met because she also shows dogs, and her mother shows dogs. I think I'm right, Melissa, right?
Yeah,
And
mom. Mom has Irish setters, shows dogs.
Yep.
We've done a little bit of agility and a little bit of dock jumping, actually.
Oh, wait.
With the Springer. So. Mhm.
So we
Yeah,
have
they'd be good dock diving dogs.
we know the number one Irish setter in dock diving. So he's out on the West Coast in the state of Washington. His name is Kermit. And he's owned by one of my dear friends, Pat and Carol McGarry. They just started dock diving, and he thinks it's a lot of fun. I'd like to find dock diving here for Junie because it'll be fun when I get him back. But I was talking about speaking with Beth Miller today on Wagtown because she brought up some really interesting thoughts, which one of them was, would your neighbor want their number on your back door? Which, of course, I'm always erring on the side of putting everything out there so no one has to look, because if they have to look, that's a problem. But that is a consideration, so you need to ask. I had an attorney call me today and ask me a question, and my go-to is always be transparent. If something goes wrong, if something comes up, always be transparent. So when you're asking people, listen, I'm putting together a list of people to call. Would you mind if I put your number on the door, on the refrigerator, so that they don't have to look for it, and they'll say yes or no, and then you'll say, well, I'll put it in a file, and then it'll only be available to the police or whatever. We know now post-COVID that it is imperative to have someone right close by to stand in and stand up and say, your dogs, you need to do this. As most of you know, Melissa wasn't here, but one of the past presidents of the Irish Setter Club of America passed away suddenly. I found out that she was 2 months younger than me. So that really gave me a moment's pause because I'm not sick either. So there you go. And I didn't think she was sick. So there you go. But you really do need to make a plan. And the thing I think that upset me the most is I sat and talked to her, like I've talked to several of you, independently about how to make a plan for your pet. And I truly believe she did it. And her brother couldn't find it, hide in her hair, couldn't find it in the computer, couldn't find it in a file. And I sat there and I went, well, what does that violate? Okay, Sally, what letter does that violate?
Don't ask me. MAAP.
P, publish.
P, publish.
Publish. Thank you, Connie.
Yeah, it violates publish because publish, although it's the last letter, it is the most important because you can have everybody lined up, and if nobody can find them, it is as if you've done nothing. And I think I've told you guys before, but I had a huge workshop out in California. There were 50 people there. We got the map done in 4 hours for everybody. Everybody knew what to do. And one of the women went in for back surgery, and she had a complication with the anesthesia, and she passed away. And she forgot to do 2 things. One was she forgot to publish it, and she put it in a file that nobody could find. And so people came in and dispersed her dogs, not the way she wanted, sort of along the lines of, my past president's dogs. People came in, they knew her. They co-owned the dogs with her, they co-bred the dogs with her, they handled dogs for her, or they were good friends of hers. So it's not like some willy-nilly came in and took the dogs. So don't get me wrong. However, no one knew the most important piece of the MAP plan, which is address the needs of the pet. So what's this dog like? Is this dog happy around other dogs? Is this dog afraid of thunder and lightning? Does this dog need medication? Can it eat food with turkey in it or duck or pork? You know, does it get sick? Is it a fence jumper, right? Is it a dog that hates little white dogs? So I will never meet Maggie with Roxy, because then Maggie and Roxy will have a tete-a-tete. So, you know, you have to know this stuff, because your dog's life will depend on it. It's so much better to give people a map, navigating that journey. You know, where's their food? And that was what was so fun with Beth today. She goes, you know, I don't think anybody knows how to feed my dogs. She goes, because I do it. I said, it's all muscle memory. Nobody knows what you do. Absolutely nobody knows. You don't even know what you do. If you sat down in a day and wrote down everything you did for your dogs, I will bet, well, for you guys, maybe, well, for Susan, all of it wouldn't be there. But for the rest of you, maybe 1/4 wouldn't be there of what you do for the dogs, because there are so many things you do every day, between, you know, having a cookie given to them, or having them sit next to you and doing those fun things, or doing the little tricks. You didn't put that in the MAP plan because, you know, oh, that wasn't important. But it really is, because it's so important if you want that transition to go smoothly, for the next person to know. You know, when I cut their nails, every time I cut the dog's nails, I kiss their nose. And I do. And I grind them all the time. And of course, Athena does just what Sally does. She covers her eyes and says, if I don't see you, you don't see me, and don't touch my nails. We have some, you know, pictures of Athena with a little bit of a mohawk, and almost nails like mine, nice and long. So she's going to the groomer because Sally doesn't want to have her traumatized on Sunday when I go over to see her. So although I am bringing a grooming kit with me, so I might just have to traumatize them for old times. But, you know if your dog is good to have its nails cut. Know if it's, poor Maggie has to be anesthetized now to be groomed because of COVID. So Maggie's a COVID puppy. So Maggie lived with a beautiful family who she found out early on, let her do a lot of stuff because she would snap at them. And so they didn't want to get bitten, so they let her do it. And so now Susan is working with a wonderful fan of Why Do Pets Matter and the MAP plan, Kathy Madsen, who's from Preventavet, to try to get some tools to make sure that Maggie's on the road. It took Maggie 18 months to get here, right, Susan?
Yeah, it did.
So it's going to take her 18 months to move forward. Maybe it'll take a little less, but it's going to take a while for her to move forward. And I'm just so grateful that, Susan has taken the information we've given her and run with it and really tried to do as much as she can. I know that Connie has absolutely run with the information and shared it with all of her Wheaton Terrier friends. Sally is sharing it with all of her friends, and hopefully, Melissa, you'll share it, because it's so disheartening, I have to say, although everyone listening to this, because I know Rose tells me, do you know how many people listen to your recording after 6:30 on Wednesday? And I go, I wish they would just write me and tell me. I just want to make sure you're doing the right thing for your pets. Oh, Mindy, so good to see you. I just want to make sure you're doing the right thing so that your pets are protected. We all want, hi, Mindy, how are you, honey?
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you. So let's check in with you real quick. I was just at a break. So Mindy is a dear friend of mine. She takes some great pictures of dogs. Tell us a little bit about your dog and your pictures.
Well, my business is Dogs I Meet Pet Photography, and I photograph family pets, I photograph pet businesses, and I do rescue work. I think photographs matter for lots of different reasons. And my girl is Sadie. She is going to be 2, I think, on Monday. And she's a double doodle.
A double doodle. Wow.
Double doodle, a golden doodle crossed with a labradoodle.
Wonderful. Awesome. So Mindy and I have met. You're also doing a new program
I am. Thanks for mentioning that. It's called Tales of Support, and
It's COVID and beyond, but COVID based.
Exactly. It's COVID based. It's about how dogs are supporting their humans during the pandemic. And it's a photo essay with a narrative. And it's been really interesting doing it. I've got about, 25 stories or so. Not all of them are up on my website, but it's a cool project. And I think I'll probably be able to do it for how dogs help with other things as well, because we all know dogs are amazing.
Yep, they are amazing. So Mindy's on Facebook, so you can look at more of her things on Facebook, but she's a friend of mine as well. And I'm hoping that she started to put her MAAP plan together so that she has made a plan. We were just talking about addressing the needs of your pet, which include all that muscle memory that nobody else would know. Are they afraid of thunder and lightning? Do they like other dogs? Do they like cats? Do they get sick if they eat something? Is this a special treat for them? And I always mention poor Roxy's malady, which is that she doesn't really prefer white dogs, little white dogs. So you have to tell people that so that your dog makes a smooth transition if, God forbid, something happens. And then we had just covered making sure that you put somewhere very prevalent the numbers to call in the event something happens to you. So that would be your refrigerator, maybe your back door. I talked to Beth Miller of Wagtown today, and she said, well, maybe my neighbor wouldn't want her number on my back door. And I said, well, that's a good idea. So be transparent and say, well, I do this. Is it okay? And if they say no, say, okay, can I put it on my fridge? And they usually say yes, because, it's only the family. But this way you make it impossible for someone to not be able to see what to do with your dog so they don't go to animal care and control. I'm just trying to make sure you keep your dogs out of animal care and control. And then she was mesmerized when I said, and it needs to be in your car too. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, if you're driving with your dogs and you get hurt, the dogs are going to animal care and control. Your neighbor isn't there. Not happening. And if your neighbor's there, they probably got injured in the car accident or maybe whatever. Maybe you just had some sort of medical emergency and they could take the dog. But if you're alone in the car with the dog, then animal care and control, the police are going to take the dog. So if you have these numbers and say, in the event I'm injured or I'm taken to the hospital and my dog is traveling with me, please make sure that you call one of these three people. They'll come and get the dogs. The other piece of that is, because I'm a lawyer and I'm not practicing law out of state, I'm simply going to give you some legal information. Give all of those people a letter that says Sally Anderson Bruce is able to take Deborah Hamilton's dogs out of animal care and control, or Connie Kohler is able to take Deborah Hamilton's dogs out of animal care and control, because the fact that both of you talked about it over a glass of wine is really fabulous. It's wonderful. I mean, that's where it starts. However, then you have to memorialize it so that if in fact they do have to get your dogs out of animal care and control will let them go, because this is a municipality, right? This is a government entity, and they want to make sure they CYA themselves, because if Deborah Hamilton comes out of the hospital and says, I don't even know somebody named Sally Anderson, I don't know any, why would you give my dog to them? So they really want to make sure. So this line of custody is really important. So addressing the needs of the pet is key, appointing your caregivers, but making sure that those caregivers' names are available to everyone. And I just quizzed Sally before, and Connie helped her, which was great. The most important piece is, so you're making the plan, fabulous. You're appointing the caregivers, wonderful. You're sharing all the information among the caregivers. So, Melissa knows about Sally, knows about Deborah, knows about Connie, because that way, if Melissa's busy and she's the one who's she knows she can call one of the other three to step in where she can't. But if you don't publish those plans, which means putting that thing up on your refrigerator or on the back door, putting that note in your car, whether you're traveling with your dogs or not, because if you're hurt and your dogs are home alone, how's anybody going to know? And if whatever happens to you has you rendered unable to communicate, who's going to know your dogs are home alone? 9/11, tons of people's animals suffered greatly because nobody knew they were home alone. Nobody knew. And so same thing with COVID. So many people, left to go to the doctor. Oh, scratchy throat. They go to the doctors. The doctor says, oh my God, your oxygen level is at 4. You're not leaving. You're not going home. And, you call your neighbor real quick. Can you just, throw some food down for the cat and blah, blah. And after 2 or 3 weeks, you're not home. The neighbor might say, enough of this. I don't have a cat for a reason. So they call animal care and control, and animal care and control came with hazmat suits, picked up the dog or cat and took them to the shelter. And there you are, fighting for your life with COVID, and your dogs are in animal care and control. And I'm being a little repetitive here, but remember, if they go to animal care and control, they only stay there for a certain amount of time. Then animal care and control, if they can't get in touch with you, if they can't get someone who is going to care for this pet, then they're going to give it to a shelter or a breed rescue. And if the dog is adopted out of a shelter or a breed rescue, it's gone. You will never see it again. I have definitely fabulous legal colleagues who have written those contracts, and it's to foster adoption, because if I'm going to adopt a dog, I'm going to want to know that, Sally isn't going to come after me 2 years later because, she didn't know that her dog was at the shelter. No, I don't want anybody to come and take my dog. So if you adopt it, it's a done deal. You can't get that dog back. So it's important when you're making the MAAP plan, navigating the journey your pet takes when you can't care for it. Doing these redundant things, putting down how to address their needs is so important. And as you all know, I'm having the workshop the weekend of October 16th. Rose is going to kill me in like a minute because she must tell me 400 times a day. And I know it's the third weekend in October, but I never make it. But it's Friday the 15th and 16th, right, Rose? You can put the link in the chat, and that way I get it correct. It's from 11 to 1. It's 2 hours a day, 15th and 16th. Did I get it right? I did. Yay. So I'm not wrong. 15th and 16th from 11 to 1. The link is going to be in the chat. This way you will have your MAAP plan done. 2 hours. We do M for an hour. We do A for an hour. We do A for an hour, which is appoint caregivers, address, and then we do publish. And we wrap up, because it is the only way I have found, it's the best way I have found for people to really bite the bullet and do it. Really sit there. And when people work together to do it, they all find different ways. I find that people go, yeah, but what about the people in my dog run group? Maybe one of those would take my dog for a little while. Or what about the people who I go to the beach with? We all run our dogs at the beach. I remember when I was young, I used to take my dog to Golden Park, and there were 4 of us who met at 6 a.m. in the morning. It was still dark most of the time in the Northeast at 6 a.m. in the morning. And we would walk a Great Dane, a Border Collie, an Irish Setter, and some mixed breed dog together. We'd all have coffee, and we would walk the 2-mile loop together so we weren't murdered while we were doing it, and our dogs were having a great time. But I would have trusted any of those people to be one of those names on the refrigerator, to hold the dog for a short period of time. We need that interim person most of all, because that person is going to be able to come in, even to your nosy neighbor, and say, listen, I know that Mindy has a list of people, and I know I'm the first on the list because I live next door, to tell you this dog stays put. Leave it alone. I know to let it out in the backyard. I am a stickler for, please don't let anybody walk your dog. Holy Toledo, don't let anybody walk your dog unless you have a relationship with them, and then that's fine. But if it's your neighbor who's just helping you out, please don't walk my dog. The fenced-in yard is perfect. The dog will not die if it goes out in the fenced-in yard for 2 or 3 days until, your long-term caregiver for the dog, or you get home from the hospital, whatever, is there. It is really important. And last, before I say goodnight tonight, remember that the MAAP plan is also good when you have to care for someone you love. I remember when my husband broke his shoulder, I was so incredibly thrilled that I could kick in all the people in my MAAP plan and say, listen, Jim's in the hospital. I'm going to be at the hospital for 2 or 3 days. Can you come by, take care of the dogs? Everybody said yes. When he came home, I said, listen, I'm exhausted. I'm taking care of a man who's injured. And since there are no men, Kieran isn't here today, so that's good. It is hard to take care of a man who's injured. I don't care who you are. I love you all. Don't get me wrong, but it's hard. It's hard. So I was exhausted, and people would come and do maybe one feeding, maybe go out and throw the ball with the dogs because I just was exhausted. It became such a treasure to me to have my MAAP people, my appointed caregivers. And you know what that does? That also builds relationship between your dogs and this person. So God forbid something happened to you. The dogs know this person. This isn't some Joe Schmo like my friend who, was the president of the Irish Setter Club of America. These dogs maybe knew these people, maybe didn't, who have them now. They might have been people who came to the kennel. They might not have been. They might have been friends. But if you bring these people in to make sure the dogs feel safe and secure with them, it'll be the best thing you've ever done. So before I leave, does anybody have any questions? Did I forget something? Yes, Mindy.
I hear you saying that there's several people on your list. It's taken me since the first time we had this conversation till now to get one person to agree to be my interim person. So I don't have several people. Does it matter?
Well, it does matter, because if the person doesn't live next door and they can't get in touch with that one person, then the dogs, are going to go to animal care and control. So I always talk about these are these hidden people that you really don't even know are there. So they're the vet techs at your vet's office. They're the groomers if you take the dog to the groomer. They're the dog park friends. They're the people who, when you go on a photo shoot, say, listen, we live, a mile away from each other. I love Frosty. I would be happy. There's this MAAP plan that this crazy woman talks about all the time. You should really be on a Wednesday night because you love your dog. You've just taken a picture of them and, you're here with me. But I would love, since you live so close to me, I'll be your person if you be my person. And I have found, so this story you didn't probably hear, but the story is that when COVID hit, and I realized that all of my caregivers for my pets were out of the state of New York, and the then Governor Cuomo of New York said, no one can come into New York. I said, holy shit, if I get COVID, one of my caregivers is in Connecticut, one of my caregivers is in Massachusetts, and the other one is in Maryland. Holy Toledo. None of those people could come in. And I said, well, that sort of makes an update of the MAAP plan. So that's why I said you need to find somebody who's really close by. And, it's something nobody thinks about. But especially in your line of work, Mindy, if you have people who you really, relate to, say, listen, I am, it's not long-term, it's short-term. If you have one person who would take the dog long-term, great. So this person would be an interim person who could hold it until the long-term person came. And I'm not saying that it isn't good to get one person who's just going to hold the dog and place it for you in the best place it can be found. It's always great to be able to find someone who's going to take the dog and keep it. That might not be something anybody can find. But if you can find someone, so you have your breeder, that's an absolute person who should be on your list, because that breeder should, by contract, say you need to return this dog to me if something happens to you. And if they don't, shame on them. But you always want your breeder. I mean, I know that when I give the MAAP program, I talk to my co-owners all the time about, okay, so you have this neighbor who loves the dog, who the dog knows, right? They know that person. I mean, especially my dog who lived in Kansas. That dog knew the neighbor better than it knew me. I do not go to Kansas unless I have to. And so I didn't know the dog that well. I saw her at nationals all the time, but there were the sons and daughters. And I said, fine, but I co-own the dog with you. And the contract says that the dog has to come back to me if you can't take care of it, not your son, not your husband, not your daughter. And I always say to them, I have no problem going into a contract with your son if something happens to you and he wants the dog. I just want him to know that the same thing goes for him that went for you. If something happens to you, you always know the dog can come home. You always know the dog can come home. And that's why I enter into a co-ownership with my owners, because from the whelping box to the rainbow bridge, I'm responsible for bringing that life into this world. So I am very strong about making sure that I'm responsible. If you have somebody who is a fabulous, and the dog knows it, like I said, you should always have the caregivers come over. If the dog knows the person, holy heck, yes, I'm going to let you keep the dog and give it to somebody else. I just want to make sure that I have the same arrangement with them that I have with you. And most people want to do it without telling the co-owner, which of course then brings in my conflict part of my work, right? Because how dare you? You can't give my dog away. Didn't you read the contract? The contract said this, and then the whole thing blows up and litigation, and oh, it's terrible. And they said it could have been so much better handled if you had just said, listen, I'm making my plans for my dog. The neighbor loves the dog. I'd love you to meet the neighbor so that you know who the dog can go to if you can't get the dog back. Connie, I love you raised your hand. You're so good. But
Thank you. Just a couple of clicks. A good example for why you need more than one person, Mindy, happened to me today. And in fact, it is part of my traveling to Philadelphia next week. My BFF, who is the number one on my list, and I have 3 people on my list, about to add 4 when I update my plan per Deborah's workshop. My BFF was exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID. It was a breakthrough infection. And Bonnie fortunately just had her 3rd Pfizer shot, her booster.
Right. Oh, good. Thank God.
So thank God. She was terrified. She found out about it at 10 o'clock this morning, immediately called me. She tried to get the home test, went to every drugstore in the Palm Springs area where she lives, totally sold out. So she went to Walgreens, got the rapid result test, fortunately got the results back. In fact, I was on the phone with her 10 minutes before this Zoom started, which is why I came in a little bit late. Fortunately, thank God, it was negative. But I'm thinking, okay, well, am I going to have to take her dogs? Because I'm her go-to person, even though she has people in Palm Springs. Some of them are seniors like the rest of us, but, immunocompromised or so on and so forth. And then, so that was a big worry. And I noodled about that until she called me to say she was negative. But the second thing, which is really going to happen, is she's on our National Brie Club board of directors with me. We are both traveling together next week, Wednesday, wheels up at LAX, back to our national specialty for 5 days. My dogs are going to be boarding at the vet who has all my MAAP plan. But I'm going to have to go to my number 2 person who lives in Ventura, California, because Bonnie's going to be with me and she would ordinarily be my local number. My sister is always my emergency number, but she lives in Baltimore, so she's going to be on the same coast I am. Yeah. So, those are the reasons you need bench. Bench depth, as they say in baseball and basketball. And, you just have to have backup upon backup upon backup, as Deborah said. So I'm a real world example living it right now.
And so what I did also, Mindy, was I'm sure you walk your dog in the neighborhood and you've met everybody who has a dog in your neighborhood as well, like your nosy neighbor or your, dog neighbor. I slipped a 3x5 card under their door during COVID. And you can do it even now and said, listen, if something happens to you, I'm happy to watch your dog until someone comes to take care of it. And of the 20 cards I handed out, I think 15 people came back to my address because I put my name and address and telephone number and said, wow, we never even thought about who would take care of the dog if one of us got sick, because this was in the height of COVID and I was having a little bit of a breakdown. And I had just moved, so I wasn't even in my neighborhood where everybody knew my dogs, and I knew I could get my neighbor Ann or my neighbor Mel to come over and take care of the dogs. So I just walked around and they all came over and said, we didn't even think of this. So you're in the perfect position of saying to people who you've worked with and taken pictures of, especially if they live close to you, listen, I know about this plan. It's a great plan. I would love to see if you would be one of my backup people, and I'd love to be one of your backup people, because nobody has a crystal ball. And if you come at it like that, if you come at it like, I'd like to help you, as opposed to, can you help me? Usually people are going to say, holy shit, I never thought of that. Wow, thank you so much, because that's what all the neighbors said to me. And so I had the telephone numbers, addresses and codes to get in people's houses in Pleasantville, thanks to my 3x5 cards. And thankfully, no one called me. I didn't get sick. I didn't need to call anybody, but it gave me a huge sense of relief that if, God forbid, Jim got sick or I got sick and I had to leave Roxy, I knew that the long-term care would be Sally, but she might not be able to get there for a few hours or a few days. And, Roxy's an older girl. I wouldn't want to leave her in the house without being able to, go to the bathroom once or twice. So the neighbors were perfect. And that's what you need. You need somebody there who's just going to hold your space. As I said, don't let them walk your dog. Please, God. Unless you have a relationship with them and they're not half-baked. They don't know your dog. They might know your dog. They're really close to your dog. Well, then use common sense. But I always say err on the side of telling them just to let them out in the backyard that's fenced. And then, the person who's the long-term caregiver of your dog would be the person who would take your dog. And on that note, any other questions? Anybody have anything else? Any burning question? I hope you guys think about joining me. Yes, Sally.
Well, speaking of Roxy and little white dogs, we went to the farmer's market on Saturday. Roxy's with us, Athena's with us. My nephew was visiting. And I said, why don't choose your dog? He chose Roxy. We're walking through the farmer's market. Everything is peaceful. We're getting vegetables.
They'll publish something.
Yeah. And there's a little white dog. And all of a sudden we have Cujo, and my nephew is 24, and with both hands, he's like holding on to the lead, and he goes, Aunt Sal. And I go, oh, I forgot to tell you. Little white dog.
That could have ended bad for the little white dog.
Yeah, and he said, really, Aunt Sal, really? And I'm looking at eggplant.
I should have had a V8, right? Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot. Yeah. It's these things that are so important that you share, because if they run after a ball and they'll go out in the street after a ball, you really need to tell the person. If they'll jump over a fence, you really need to tell someone. Atticus is a terrible fence jumper. He will jump any fence. And as I'm putting my fence in, and we have water behind our house and he loves to swim, but there are oyster beds which will slice him and dice him. So I am going to put an invisible fence in and a hard fence just for Atticus, because he means that much to me. Now, he doesn't stay with me very much, but he means that much to me that I'm going to put something in. I know that Junie, he's a really good fence honorer. And Roxy is too, but Atticus, boom, right over 4 feet. That's nothing. I can do that. Although now he's 9 or 10. And so maybe he's not jumping as well as he used to. Let's, fingers are crossed. But you really do have to share that information, because it's the things that are muscle memory for you that'll get the dog in trouble. So the things you do to keep your dog safe, because they have this little idiosyncrasy. And Susan, I know your dog has a number of idiosyncrasies. You really have to write those down, because those are the ones that are going to make the transition, God forbid, for your pet, short-term, long-term, happy. Because, they're not going to be put in a position where, holy God, who knew that this dog would eat white dogs? Who knew? Well,
what is it with the white dogs? My old dog hated little white dogs too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something. And you know what? It happened during COVID. She never, ever, ever had any issue with any dog. And walking the streets, I think I've spoken about this before. I think my pulling all the dogs close to me when we walk by people during COVID so that we wouldn't matriculate made her feel as if anything that came, and the little white dog on the corner, which I can empathize with her, the little white dog on the corner was a little annoying. And I think she put all of her frustration on that one object. And so, yeah, white dogs, you got to be careful with, Roxy. And thankfully, where my new house is, which is still not done, that's a whole nother story. There are no white dogs. That's the good news. Thank you, God. But for Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation, the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, and of course, this wonderful community, I hope all of you will share the fact. The link is there in the chat box for the 15th and 16th. I hope you'll share it with your friends, because it really is an important program. I'm going to give you guys so much information. You'll have templates to fill out. Connie, Sally, and Susan have already gone through the first one I did. And I don't know, guys, did you find it helpful?
Very helpful. Yes,
Very.
absolutely.
And Susan's still working on it.
I am. I Yeah, I feel guilty about it, but
And I try not to make her feel guilty, but I do have to give her a little bit of a prod because
yeah,
she definitely lives in a situation where if something happened to her, she'd need to have someone taking care of the dog. And like you, Mindy, she goes, I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody. And I said, well, there's the breeder. Number one, the breeder. The breeder
Yeah.
is your first go-to. And if it's a shelter, the shelter is your first go-to because they know the dog. And probably if you've adopted it from a shelter, you have to return it to the shelter anyway. But they will help you know people who either foster or are in your neighborhood will help you with the pet, especially in the rescue world, Mindy. There'll be people that they will know that you can connect with to say, listen, you live 2 towns down. If something happens to me, I just want to make sure that you can come and let the dog out. I just don't want the dog to go to animal care and control. And I'll do the same for you. And everybody will fall into line, believe me. Any other questions, guys, before we say goodnight? And I see you next Wednesday when I will be just finishing up Morris and Essex.
I will not be next Wednesday because I'll still be en route.
In the air, flying.
In the air, just landing in Philadelphia. So I will catch up with you all the following week.
You will be missed. And remember to send me your contact information so
Yes, ma'am.
I can try to catch up with you Thursday morning. You guys
Absolutely.
take care. Don't hesitate to write to me. Hope to see some of you. It's so great to see you, Melissa and Mindy. And of course, the regulars. I love you guys. Go home and kiss your dogs for me.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thanks.
Deborah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Mm.